The Three Little Pigs Incident, a Building Inspector's Report. By B.B. Wolf, Senior Building Inspector, Woodland District Code Enforcement Division. Let me set the record straight. After 27 years with the Woodland Building Department, I've seen every construction shortcut and code violation imaginable. But nothing, and I mean nothing, compares to the infamous Three Pigs incident of 2023. The media had a field day with it, of course. Big Bad Wolf terrorizes innocent homeowners. Please. All I did was enforce the International Building Code 2021 edition with local Woodland amendments. It all started with an anonymous tip to our department's compliance hotline. The caller, who I would later discover was a rather fastidious beaver upstream, reported unauthorized construction activities in the Lower Woods District. 3 new constructions had appeared virtually overnight, with no posted permits, architectural drawings, and highly questionable materials. As a senior inspector for Zone 4, the case landed on my desk. I looked over the records first, following the protocol. No building permit applications, no site plans, no structural calculations, no soil testing reports, in a high wind zone, seasonal flooding concerns. This was more than negligence. This was dangerous. Preliminary site photos from our code enforcement team were alarming. There were 3 different buildings. One looked like it was made entirely of straw, which is against IRC section R301.2.1. Another was unmilled stack of stick assemblage, which is against at least 6 different structural integrity codes. And the third was made of brick, which might be okay but still needs to be inspected, certified by a professional mason. I scheduled the inspections for the first following morning. Standard procedure dictates that we notify property owners 48 hours in advance, but Municipal Code Section 103.9 allows for the immediately inspection in cases of imminent structural failure. Given that our meteorological department had forecasted 40-mile-an-hour winds for the coming week, I invoked this clause. The first house, straw construction, was a textbook example of what not to build. I approached at exactly 9 a.m., clipboard in hand, wearing my department-issued khakis and a building inspector badge displayed. I knock on what generously could be called a door. Little pig, let me come in," I called out, using our department's legally mandated greeting, which our legal team should honestly update for professional standards. "Not by the hair of my chinny chin chin," came the reply, which is not an acceptable response in our inspection protocol manual. I adjusted my hard hat, double-checked my inspection credentials were visible. "Sir, I am a licensed building inspector with the Woodland Building Department. I need to conduct an immediate safety evaluation of these premises." "Go away, we're not falling for it, Wolf." This kind of species-based discrimination is unfortunately common in code enforcement. I filed many complaints with HR about it. That's a battle for another day. I pulled out my tablet and began documenting the violations. No footer, no foundation, no structural support members of any kind. The straw wasn't even properly secured to meet basic wind resistance requirements. One good gust could just send the whole structure into a protected owl habitation next door. I sighed and did what any responsible inspector would do. I tested the lateral force resistance. One huff and puff test load later, my worst fears were confirmed. The entire house collapsed, failing to meet even the most basic standards of the IRC section R301.2.1. The owner came scrambling out and ran towards the second house before I could even issue a stop work order. I noted inspection refused, structure deemed unsafe on my form, and moved on to the next property. The stick house was, if possible, even more egregious. Untreated lumber, no hurricane ties, 0 consideration for lateral bracing. The owner of the first house was already inside when the second pig, and they both refused to acknowledge my official capacity. Little pigs, let me in." I tried again, holding up my inspector badge. "Not by the hair on our chinny chin chins." 2 voices this time, equally obstinate. I pulled out my inspection checklist and began noting the violations. No fire stops, no egress windows, no proper load path to the foundation. The list went on and on. Again, I was forced to conduct a lateral stability test and, well, one huff and puff later, you can guess what happened. Both pigs fled to the brick house while I was still writing up a notice of violations. Now the brick house. I'll give credit where credit's due. Masonry work showed promise. but it still needed proper inspection and certification. By this point, all 3 pigs were inside and they were becoming increasingly hostile. "This is your final warning," I announced. "I am authorized under Building Code Section 104.6 to conduct a thorough inspection of these premises. Failure to comply with this will result in significant fines and possible criminal charges." They responded by barricading the door with what sounded like unpermitted furniture additions. Do you know how many occupancy regulations this violates? I spent the next hour conducting external measurements and documenting numerous violations: improper setback from the property line, non-conforming roof pitch, missing moisture barrier, and unauthorized decorative fixtures. I could hear them inside the whole time, probably concealing evidence of further violations. Then I noticed the chimney, a major violation if I ever saw one. No spark arrestor, no proper flashing, not even a basic tuck pointing between the bricks. It was my duty to investigate. What happens next was grossly misrepresented in the media. Yes, I attempted to gain entry through the chimney for inspection purposes. Yes, there happened to be a pot of water on the fire below. But it was they who lit the fire when they heard me coming. I have burn marks on my tail to prove it, and the workers' comp is still processing that claim. The subsequent department review cleared me of any wrongdoing. My methods were deemed unorthodox but still within inspection guidelines. First 2 structures were condemned and demolished, exactly as they should have been. The third house was eventually brought up to code, though I suspect they only hired a licensed contractor because of the hefty fines they received after the first 2 attempts. I'll admit I might have been a bit zealous in my pursuit of code compliance that day. But when you've seen as many structural failures as I have, the collapsal treehouse of 19, the Great Beanstalk disaster of 20, the 3 Bears non-permitted addition incident, you learn that ignoring building codes costs lives. The media never published my full inspection report, of course. They were too busy painting me as the villain, making up stories about me wanting to eat the pigs. Please, I'm a vegetarian who believes in tofu construction. But try explaining that to a public that's already made up its mind about wolves in the building inspection. The real tragedy here isn't my damaged reputation, or even the waste of building materials. It's the ongoing crisis of unpermitted construction in our forest communities. Every day, innocent animals put their lives at risk by living in structures that don't meet basic code requirements. Last week, I received a memo that the department is considering revising the inspection protocols, making them less intimidating and more community-friendly. They're even talking about changing our official greeting to a simple "Good morning." Where's the tradition in that? Next thing you know, they'll be telling us to stop huffing and puffing altogether and just use a standard testing equipment like every other municipal inspection department. But I'll adapt. I always have. 27 years on the job, and I've never lost a commitment to keeping our woodland residents safe through proper building code enforcement. Though I have to admit, I'm looking forward to retirement. I've got my eye on a lovely little college in a 100-acre wood. Fully permitted, of course, with all the proper documentation. I did the final inspection myself. For now, though, I'll keep doing what I do best, protecting our community from the dangers of standard construction, one inspection at a time. And if anyone tries to tell me you're the bad guy in this story, just ask them to see the building permits. In my experience, those who cry "wolf" the loudest usually have something to hide.